So I assume this video popped up in your related videos box and you're like, I wonder why that vlog is so long. Let me check it out. Well, let me warn you right now, this is not a normal vlog. You can leave anytime you want. I won't be offended. In fact, that's why I didn't put this video in your subscription feed, because I know this is not exactly the kind of vlog that you were expecting when you subscribed to my channel. That said, I assume that on some level you subscribe to my channel because you and I have some similarities, some similar personal traits or outlooks or levels of awesomeness or something. You like how I was simultaneously complimenting you and complimenting myself on awesomeness there? That was awesome. Too many uses of the word awesome in too few sentences. The point is that this video is going to be very different, but the reason I'm doing it is because this is something that I wish I knew earlier in life. This is something I wish someone had told me when I was younger. Because if that had happened, I think I could have avoided a tremendous amount of stress, anxiety, depression, and like physical sickness, actually, as a result of my lack of mindfulness, which is what this video is going to be about. And I would like to do sort of a series on this if it becomes of interest to you all, if you enjoy watching it. So you might see more mindfulness related videos popping up in your suggested related videos box. Eventually you might even see them in your sub box on this channel or another channel if the subject matter is of interest and use to you. So what is mindfulness? Let's start there. What is meditation? They're sort of interrelated, and I'll kind of use the terms interchangeably. But the important thing to know, and also sort of a paradox, is that mindfulness and meditation are a way of being, not a technique. I'll say that again. Mindfulness is a way of being, not a technique. That said, here's the paradox, we will use techniques to reach a state of mindfulness. We will use techniques as sort of, you might say, doorways to open into my metaphors are not very good today. Techniques can be like a doorway, you know, that opens and allows us to walk into a room of mindfulness, if you will, right? Yeah, I think that metaphor kind of worked. So that's why we'll use techniques, even though mindfulness itself is not a technique. Now, what we'll be doing in these videos is I will be offering various, sometimes techniques, sometimes questions to ask yourself, sometimes thoughts about mindfulness, about being, about meditation. It'll be a wide variety of things. And my hope is that these videos can be something that you might watch sometime when you're stressed, when you're anxious, perhaps when you can't sleep, perhaps when you're bored, whatever, and they will give you an opportunity to open that door and to walk into a place of mindfulness. Now, I realize I still did not actually define what mindfulness or what meditation are. Mindfulness is a non-judgmental awareness of what's happening right now. And you're like, cool, thanks. That was not helpful at all. I still feel just as stressed as I did before. Thank you for your dictionary definition. And that, of course, is the problem with words. Because words are metaphors for the raw material of reality. And like all metaphors, words have their limitations in describing things that are beyond language. So that's why mindfulness is not something that can be merely taught with dictionary definitions. It has to be something that you experience for yourself. Ergo, I will share with you techniques and such as a way of reaching that state and coming to an understanding yourself of what a non-judgmental awareness feels like in your mind and your body. Make sense so far? Hopefully the answer is yes. So what I want to do today in our first video together is practice a sort of inquiry, a question that will give us an idea of what it feels like to be mindful. Before we do that, we will start with just some simple deep breaths, just to kind of bring us into maybe a little bit more relaxed state, get us sort of in tune with what's going on in our bodies. I told you this was going to be a very different vlog, didn't I? I know, some of you are sitting there and you're like, what is going on? I don't understand. Just give it a try, all right? Just work with me. See, maybe it's not for you. If not, that's totally fine. Because I know also, a lot of you are subscribed to my channel for what in some ways is kind of the opposite of being mindful. This is really tricky to explain, but, a lot of what I talk about, obviously, in my speeches is about motivation, right? About doing 1MT, going after your goals in life, etc. And that's a great thing to do, right? Definitely, like, go after your goals, do 1MT. But there's sort of a flip side to it, which is what these videos are about. And the flip side is, although yes, work hard, do what you can to make a difference and make the world a better place, but also do it starting from a place of accepting things the way they are right now. And once you go out and you try to do these things, you try to achieve these goals or whatever, whether or not you succeed, do not allow that to have bearing on how you see yourself. In other words, your self-image should not be tied to the outcomes of certain situations, to whether or not you quote-unquote succeed or fail. No, your self-image has to be tied to something deeper, something that is more fundamental, something that is now, and something that is rooted in a belief that you are enough already. So yes, there is a paradox there between, on the one hand, doing 1MT, and on the other hand, being mindful and accepting whatever the present moment is bringing us. But part of being mindful is being willing to live with certain paradoxes and mysteries. Because you might say the opposite of mindfulness is chasing every thought. Every time a question comes into your mind, like, oh, but what about this contradiction and this idea, and then I should think about this idea and that idea, that's the opposite of mindfulness, right? Because you're getting caught up in all these thoughts, and then it builds, and, for some of us, if you're like me and you have like actual problems sometimes with anxiety or panic attacks, that's what happens, right? More and more thoughts, and you're chasing these thoughts, and it just builds up, and then it becomes this like physiological thing that takes over your whole body. So when we're trying to practice mindfulness, we will try to set aside mysteries and paradoxes. We will see them. We will acknowledge them. We will say, yes, this is something that we don't understand, but we'll just be okay with that. We won't have to chase that rabbit. We won't have to answer every question that pops into our head. We will, as I mentioned, be practicing today with a question. But it's the opposite sort of question. It is a question that is made to not be answered, but instead to be watched. But let's get back to those deep breaths that I promised before I went on that long tangent. So we're going to just take a few deep breaths. I'll guide you. I'll say breathe in. We'll hold it for a couple seconds, and then we'll breathe out. Now, obviously, if you get dizzy or whatever, don't do this. If you have any medical conditions that prevent you from breathing deeply, please consult your doctor, etc., etc. Okay, so breathe in, Hold it. Breathe out. Breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. Breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. Breathe in. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. Breathe in, but just a little bit more deeply. Just really fill your whole chest. In. Hold. Out. So you might already feel a sort of different physical sense than you did before we took those breaths. Maybe you're a little more relaxed, maybe you're a little warmer or colder. I don't know. But perhaps there's the beginning of a sense of what's going on in your body more than what you had when the video started. And if so, that's a good thing. And so what we're going to do now is an exercise, a technique that it's really one of my favorite questions, because it instantly shows you what it is, how it feels to practice mindfulness. This is a question that I learned from one of my favorite authors on the subject of mindfulness, Eckhart Tolle. And he writes this question. The question is, this is something that you'll ask yourself, presumably silently, but if you like to talk out loud and there's nobody around, you could also ask it out loud. But you ask yourself, what is my next thought? Or, I wonder what my next thought will be. And then you just wait until the next thought comes into your mind. And probably the thought will come in right away. It might be something like, this is weird, why am I doing this? Or it might be, I should pause this video. Or it might be, I wonder what that related video is. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Literally, it doesn't matter. That's the whole point. All you're doing is watching it, and then you see the thought, and you're like, oh, well, my next thought was about how I wanted to watch that video. I wonder what my next thought will be. And then you wait, and then thought comes into your mind. Oh, I'm hungry. Cool, you're hungry. That was your next thought. And then you ask it again. I wonder what my next thought will be. See what we're doing here? We are separating that stream of constant thoughts from our awareness. We are allowing ourselves to become aware of those thoughts instead of those thoughts controlling that narrative we have of ourselves. That is what mindfulness is. So as I said, it's, ultimately we'll, in these videos, perhaps practice certain concentrative meditation techniques, where you're trying to focus on a single object of awareness or focus on your breath or whatever. And, it becomes frustrating because, of course, there's always thoughts popping into your mind. And, the temptation is to be like, oh, I'm bad at meditating because there's thoughts popping into my mind. No. There's always going to be thoughts popping into your mind. The point is, do you get caught up in those thoughts? Do you believe those thoughts? And do you chase those thoughts? Right? So this is why we're beginning with this foundation. Instead of trying to focus and concentrate on something and then feeling frustrated about it, we're just going to start from a standpoint of, I know there's just going to be a continuous thought stream, and I'm just going to watch and see what pops into my head. And that popped in my head. Okay, I wonder what the next thought is. And then it was that. All right, now what's the next thought? Right. So there's no judging yourself. There's no criticizing yourself for having thoughts. If those thoughts are stressful, or if they are thoughts of anger, or thoughts of upset, regret, worry, doesn't matter. Whatever it is, that's the thought. You just acknowledge it and let it just float around or do whatever it wants to do. And you just watch it. That is what mindfulness is. Now, before we actually start formally sort of practicing this, which we'll do for a couple of minutes here at the end of the video, I want to give you a metaphor that Eckhart used in sharing this inquiry, which I just love. He said, it's like you are a cat at the edge of a mouse hole, and you're just waiting there for a mouse at any moment could pop out. Just waiting, just watching to see what pops out. So in this metaphor, the mouse coming out of the mouse hole, that's a thought, and you're the cat. And you might say your field of awareness is, sort of that mouse hole. And so you are just watching that field of awareness, seeing what thoughts pop in with just that intensity of a cat on the hunt. I think that's a really cool metaphor for what we're doing. So we're just going to practice this here together for a few minutes. So sit any way you want. You can be laying down, eyes open, eyes closed, doesn't matter. So ask yourself, I wonder what my next thought will be. And then you wait. And a thought probably came in your head. Cool. Now you ask yourself again, I wonder what my next thought will be. Probably you had like 2 or 3 thoughts in that pause. And that's totally fine. All we're doing here is just watching our thoughts. So now, ask yourself that. See what pops into your head. Now, I'm going to end this video here in a moment. And you can sit with this inquiry for a few more minutes if you want. You can just watch your thoughts. Keep asking, I wonder what my next thought will be. The next thought comes. You're like, oh, all right, cool. It was a thought about pizza. Interesting. I wonder what the next thought will be. Comes in your mind. It's like, oh, I wonder what color hair Tyler Oakley has right now. Interesting thought. Wonder what the next thought will be. Comes in your head. I wonder how it would feel to be a vampire. Interesting. Next thought, next thought. And ultimately what we're doing here is training ourselves to be aware of our thoughts, to not judge ourselves based on, the so-called quality of our thoughts or their value or non-value. No, we're just watching them. And what that ultimately leads us to as we practice is mindfulness. In fact, it doesn't even lead us there. I take that back. It doesn't even lead us there. It is, you are immediately mindful. Like, as soon as you say, I wonder what my next thought is, boom, you have instantly entered the space. The door is open, you've walked into the room, you are mindful. For that moment, you're mindful. For the next moment, you can be mindful. That's all it is. And as you practice it through time, you'll find there will be greater pauses between the thoughts. And that is, of course, a place of greater relaxation, greater peace, less stress, less anxiety. These are what we might call the side benefits, the fruits of a mindfulness practice. So, if you want to practice the deep breathing again, you can go back to about minute 10 in the video. That's when we started doing that. If you want, you can also just let the video end, and you can just sit with your thoughts, watch them like a mouse at the edge of that, or no, you're watching them like the cat. If you become the mouse, that means, in that metaphor, that you're no longer mindful because you've become the thought. You're the cat. You're just watching to see what's the next thought. What's the next thought? See if you can sit with that for 5-10 minutes. See how you feel at the end. And let me know in the comments what you think of this mindfulness exercise.